Grow, how to become a Christian leader in your workplace is what we're covering this morning, but this can also apply to any kind of volunteer organization that you do. This is just how to become a leader in pretty much any organization. We'll talk next week because there's going to be some overlap about how you become a leader in your community at large. And Christians really need to step up in both of these. Christians should be leaders in organizations and in the community. Well, it's one of those scriptures that people don't like to hear. It's like the scripture, women submit to men, they always roll their eyes and, that kind of stuff. And we don't like to hear this. But Colossians 3:23 says, if you're an employee, scripture teaches we are to work for our employers as if for the Lord. We are to work for our employers as if for the Lord. Now, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that if you hate what you're doing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So how do we do that? How do we maximize that? A couple things. First of all, one of the worst things that can happen to any organization is called silos. When silos happen in organizations, that's when departments start bickering with each other. They establish their own little fiefdoms. They don't work together as a team. And one of the ways that happens is, well, that's not my job. One of the ways Amazon has grown to be what it is, one is that Jeff Bezos had a very long range rather than short kind of vision, is that there is a culture at Amazon where John Rossman, who worked for Amazon for years, self-published a little book on leadership principles from Amazon. He said that that's not my job as an express ticket to an exit interview at Amazon. You are never, ever, 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 ever to say at Amazon.com, that's not my job. You are expected to always do whatever you can do to help out a teammate. And that helps destroy silos. Silos are death for any organization. When you've got marketing over here and you got accounting over here and all kinds of stuff, and they just stick together like this and they cluster together and they're always fighting for each other for the budget and so forth, that's death. That's death to teamwork. That's death to... Don't become a person who helps perpetuate that. You may not always be able to, because you may not be in the lead spot, you may not be able to crush that, but you can certainly help not contribute to it. Make sense? But it's still about finding that right job, that right place, that right volunteer opportunity, and you have found that right gig when you find what's called flow, what leadership experts call flow. Now, there's all kinds of stuff out there about flow, which I'll talk about here in a second, that's been kind of co-opted by kind of the New Agers. So be careful about what you read in this area. But flow basically means I like what I'm doing. Flow basically means you found that sweet spot where you're doing what you know you should be doing because you like it. Now, every job's got that one area. It's like, oh my gosh, right? Every job has that, but generally speaking, you're looking for that flow. Now, I'll give you $1 if you can pronounce this name. But anyway, the guy who came up with the idea of flow, High or whatever. And he said this. He basically said, this is the long explanation, but the short explanation is this. Happiness will not just zap you. Happiness will not just fall out of the sky. You have to create happiness. And so the way you create happiness is you find what you're good at, what you like to do, and you do it. So you've hit flow when it's challenging, but not so challenging that it's overwhelming. Does that make sense? Yes. That's when you know you've really found flow. And he gives people have broken this down 7 different ways to recognize flow. Number 1, note what you're doing when you feel it. When you're happy, do you ever stop and ask why you're happy? We don't do this, do we? But we should. If we're sad, we're happy, we never stop and ask why. And this goes back to what we talked about last week. One of the keys to success in any area is what's called emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence means you can see yourself as other people see you. Objectively, you can see yourself as other people see you, and then you can take the steps you need to take to fix any kind of flaws or things that make people run away from you. That's emotional intelligence. And that starts with stopping to ask, okay, why does this irritate me? Why does this make me sad? Why does this make me happy? And when I'm happy, what's going on? And you should actually note that. If you've got a smartphone, you can download an app called Evernote. Great little free app. And it's an app that will take your notes and on every device you have, if you have a laptop, iPad, so forth, that you can download and it'll have all those notes on there, and you can keep notes on there. And you can, so when you're really like, oh man, that was great, that was awesome, you're at work or you're volunteering or you're doing something, man, I love that, stop and note what you were doing at that time. That'll help give you some insight. And who you are with, because that makes a difference too, who you're working with. There are some people we love to work with, and then there's everybody else. Ask the big question. One leadership expert put it this way: what's your sentence? One of these days, when you go to be with the Lord, and that's our goal here at Christ Community Church, is to go to be with the Lord, not somewhere else. One of these days when you go to be with the Lord, and you will, last time I checked, the fatality rate for human beings was 100% eventually. It just happens. What's the one sentence people can say about you? What's your one sentence? Lincoln's was, he freed the slaves and preserved the Union. And so you need to ask it, what do you want that sentence to be, and work toward that every single day. This is a little like Stephen Covey, if you've read his little book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of his 7 habits, we'll talk about a little bit, is start with the end in mind. What is your big goal, and how do you get there? He would say, if you wrote your own obituary, what would you like it to say? And you need to work on that every single day. And you ask the little question, were you better today than yesterday? Did you do something, even a little thing, to get to your big goal? And keep in mind, because too many of us just want this to happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. I'm going to talk about the Beatles here in a minute. The Beatles were not an overnight success. They worked their tails off for a long time. But they, little by little, got better. And always keep in mind, small victories create momentum. Little steps get you where you need to go. One step at a time. Usually it's not a leap. Try new stuff. I'm looking at some people that are retired. Now, it used to be, for example, when they set up the Social Security system was set up basically because hardly anybody lived to the age where people collect Social Security. That's the reason why it's such a mess today, because it was originally designed for people who they viewed as very, very old at that time. Well, now, very, very old is not very old. It used to be we spent 18 to 25 years learning, the next 40 years working, and then we were lucky to have a year or two after that. Now you can have another 25, 30 years after that. Well, what are you going to do? Just sit on your butt and watch reruns of Matlock? I mean, come on. You need to find something to do, and you need to try new things. More and more financial planners are telling people, save not just for retirement, save for adventure. Find something new and do it. And those of you with a little, like, I'm getting this kind of new kind of look in my hair that's slowly creeping in, this like salt and pepper stuff I got going on, you get more and more of that. You need to find, especially younger guys, to mentor. If you've been in business, you've been in ministry, you need to find some young guys and help mentor them. And remember last week we talked about generational IQ. Remember that the young kids always ask, why? One of the things that we have to continuously do, we can no longer just quote Bible verses at people. Because if they're born between 1982 and 2000, you can't just say, thus saith the Lord. You have to explain why the Lord thus saith. You have to explain that to them in order to help them. Number 5, take a mental, emotional, and spiritual inventory. Where are you? Why do you do the things you do? One of the reasons Tony Robbins has become so rich, and I disagree with a lot of what Tony Robbins says, by the way. It's a little too new agey and stuff for me, but Tony Robbins, the leadership guru, leadership coach, all kind of stuff. One of the things he has basically sold people on is, his big thing is, do you understand why you do what you do? Because you will not change until you do understand that. That's an emotional IQ again. Why do you do what you do? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What makes you frustrated? What tics do you have? I have a verbal tic that drives me crazy. I say right a lot. Hate it. Hate watching myself speak. Can't stand watching myself speak. Not only because I have this Appalachian twang that don't even get me started. But anyway, you have to take some time to really think about yourself. And we think about ourselves a lot, but we typically don't think about ourselves in a critical, self-critical way. And that's how you become a leader. Power out of ruts. You're going to have ruts. Even in jobs you like, volunteer opportunities you like, things you like, you're going to hit a rut. You're going to hit a plateau. Okay, so I like working out. You do what's called bulk and cut when you do weightlifting. So when I first lost weight, I lost 70 pounds in 9 months, just running my butt off and capping my calories. Then when I started lifting weights and I bulked 40 pounds. Now, so I was up to 195. Then I wanted to cut, and what you do is cut. You always put on a little fat when you bulk, and so then you cut to keep the muscle and lose the fat. Well, I got down to about 179, stuck. Next week, 179. Next week, 179. I often go over to mom and dad's loft after I work out to go and go shower. And then I get on that scale, and I've almost punched that scale a couple of times. It's like, what do you mean 179? I just worked my butt off all week, and I'm starving myself to death. Plateau. So plateau, you have to power through it, and you've got to do something new. You've got to do what you got to do to power through that rut. So I started doing CrossFit on top of weightlifting to try to shake my metabolism up and get moving, and that's just things you have to do. But grit and emotional IQ, remember, the two biggest keys to success. If you're trying to help your kids, your grandkids, whatever, to become successful, it's like we talked about last week. Do not praise talent. Do not praise results. Praise effort. Praise effort. As long as they're working as hard as they can, doing their best, even if they fail, that's a good thing. And you need to teach them that they need to keep pushing on. It's grit. Move steps closer to mastery through deliberate practice. You find something you like to do and you're good at, get better. And get better and better and better and better. And Malcolm Gladwell has argued, there's been some pushback on this in his book Outliers, that it takes about 10,000 hours for you to truly master something. 10,000 hours to truly master anything. And you're about to hear Dad preach. He obviously needs 20,000 hours, but anyway. But success stories are never overnight success stories. Bill Gates became who he is because he spent 10,000 hours building and rebuilding computers as a kid. The Beatles spent 10,000 hours playing club gigs in Germany before they returned to England to get a record contract. They went and played all these seedy clubs in Hamburg, playing sometimes 6, 7 sets a night. And they did that for years before coming back to England, and suddenly they were the Beatles. No, they weren't just the Beatles. They were a band that literally worked their butt off in German clubs to become as good as they got. It's that 10,000 hour rule. You have to be deliberate. You have to learn from your mistakes. You have to be able to take constructive criticism and power through it. And here's another little helpful, some tidbits. Break down Stephen Covey's 2 best-selling books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and The 8th Habit. The 8th Habit we're going to talk a lot more about next week because this is something that doesn't get talked about enough and is very, very important if you want to become a community leader. So Stephen Covey says, number one, some of these are just common sense, we just don't think about it. Number one, be proactive, not reactive. This is that emotional IQ thing. Again, if you're always reacting, first of all, you're not the kind of person people want to be around. And you're not emotionally healthy. Be proactive. This goes back to, okay, why am I doing this? What do I need to do? All that kind of stuff. Ask yourself, very simple, I'm going to ask this again later, are you the kind of person, and we just talked about, there's people we like to work with and there's everybody else. Are you that everybody else for someone else? Or are you somebody they want to work with? Do you know? Begin with the end in mind. Goes back to if you had to write your obituary, what's your one sentence? The same thing with goals. What's your big goal? You've got to have some big goals. Are you working towards it? Are you taking little steps every day to get there? Put first things first. It's really easy to get busy with a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter. Ever had one of those days where you're just like exhausted and you look back and go, I don't even know what I did. I didn't accomplish anything. At most days, oh man. So it's that when you set those goals and you have that big important thing, that should be the first thing you try to tackle the first moment you get a chance to. If that means skipping lunch, if that means what, that's what you do. Put first things first. Bless you. Always think win-win when you're negotiating with somebody. How can they get forward and I move forward, not just win-lose. I'm going to get it all. They're going to get nothing. You can't. If you have that kind of mentality, you go into anything. I don't care if you're dealing with volunteer organizations, churches, one-on-one with people. People are going to run from you. Absolutely run from you. But if you're always saying, okay, I can get this out of it and you can get this out of it and we can both win, then you can be the kind of person people actually want to deal with. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That means don't just wait to talk, listen. Now, this will make you a leader anywhere. Listen. Too many people just wait to talk, and they don't really listen. And people can see that you're not really listening to them. They can tell. And so you got to look them in the eye, and you got to listen. We talked about this last week, especially dealing with men and women, right? If you weren't here last week, George, if you weren't here last week, here's the deal. I gave everybody the secret to the sexes. Women are different. That's the secret. Women are different. And I'm not sure anybody in here's figured that out. Yeah, they don't act like it. So here's what I tell you last week. One of the things that we do, men want to fix things immediately, and we're always interrupting our spouses or whatever. Okay, honey, let's do this. And what do women want? They want you to shut up and listen to all of it. And express empathy. But women, so men, you need to do that. You need to be quiet, let them talk, let them finish, express empathy, show affection. But then women, then they're going to want to fix it. That's how God wired men. You need to let them try and fix it. Because too many women I know are like, you're not listening to me. And the guys are like, you're not listening to me. And the women are like, basically, I hear these arguments and the women are like, you're not listening to me. The guy goes, you're not listening to me. The women are like, so? He's like, I don't care to listen to you. You're just supposed to listen to me. You're expecting your man to be a woman. You see the problem with that? Let them try and fix it. It has to go both ways, guys. But you both need to listen. Listen. Christians need to be great listeners. Because we're in a culture where there's going to be a lot of spiritual burnout from the sin that the culture is just fostering and saying is okay. A lot of these people are going to crash and burn, and they're going to need help. And we need to be the ones to help them. Synergize, just bring it all together. Bring it all together. This is destroying silos, not only in organizations, but in your own life. Bring it all together. Sharpen the saw. Keep learning. Keep learning. You are never too old. Just keep learning. Learn, learn, learn. Challenge, challenge, challenge. Until the nurse is putting the pillow over your head to finally put you out of your misery. Keep learning. Number 8, this is the 8th one that Covey came up with. Help others find their voice. Help others become leaders. We don't think enough about our contact list, or if you're old school, your Rolodex. You know people who need to know people. Connect them. Help connect people, especially when you see their passions. Football player wants to be a preacher. I know some people in the kind of theological realm that he would like to connect with. And I've been trying to connect those two. It's tough because they're both introverts, and getting two introverts to reach out to each other is like, it's an interesting thing. It's like, come on, come on, come on. But that'll happen. And I don't want anything out of that. You shouldn't want anything out of that. It's just helping other people. You will earn a lot of trust by doing that. in your organization, in the community, in a church, if you're just looking to help connect people and help them become leaders, that will build a lot of trust. Any questions before we move on? We good? If you're a boss, or if you're helping a boss, a traditional management model may not be the most productive. There's some interesting science that's come out of there. Daniel Pink's best-selling book laid out compelling evidence that money is actually not the primary factor in finding the most productive worker. There are generally two personality types when it comes to hiring. And this also applies to if you're going to volunteer for a community organization, you're looking for volunteers. You should keep this in mind as well, because this is important. There are two types, type X and type I. Type X are those who look for money and attention. It's all about them and their wallet. That's type X. Type I wants independence. They want to be able to do their thing. They want to do it well, and they want to do it for a reason. They want a certain amount of money, of course, but it's secondary to them. Type I's, if they can live off the salary to do what they want to do, they thrive. They thrive. They do very well. So, jump here. Studies have shown that type I's, by the way, are 4 times more productive than type X. 4 times more productive. Type X personalities never get enough money or attention. They never get enough. They also have more psychological problems and physical problems. Narcissists do not do well. Now, remember the late Steve Jobs? Right? Co-founder of Apple? Type I or type X? Type I. Steve Jobs actually lived in a tiny home. When Bill Gates came to visit him, he kept saying, is this your servant's house? Steve says, no, this is my house. He goes, you live here all the time? And Steve Jobs said, yeah, this is my house. Because he didn't care. Steve Jobs did not care about the money, all that kind of stuff. He cared about, he had this vision, and he wanted to implement it, and he wanted to change the world, and he did it. What type would you guess Donald Trump is? This isn't my guess. This has been proven, so just guess. I or X? Type X. Type X. And I'm not being partisan. If you can see, even on Facebook, my T-shirt, I'm writing in Ted Nugent for president. So I'm just saying.
Why is Trump so successful?
You can be successful, but you're not as productive. You think about which would you rather own, Apple stock or Trump steak stock? Now, type X can be successful. They're not as successful, and they're typically not people want to work with. There's a reason why, again, this is not partisan, there's a reason why Donald Trump only surrounds himself with his family. Because most people don't want to deal with him. I've had donors who worked at Goldman Sachs that said it was just a nightmare to deal with him. Now, Steve Jobs could be difficult to deal with, but only on the production line. He was really hard on his engineers because he wanted it better, 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 better. And so there's a difference there. How do you find an I or an X? How do you recognize them? A couple things, and Tim Stevens at Vanderbloom. Vanderbloom is the largest research organization out there to help churches find pastors. He says, here are a couple things you need to do. One, as I'm going to say here in a minute, I'm going to repeat here in a minute, resumes are worthless. Resumes are worthless. What you're looking for is to discover their skills, their leadership abilities, their capacity to learn, their passion, their heart for the organization, and their character. That's what you're looking for. Do they want this job? Do they like this place? Are they honest? That's what you're looking for. And there are ways to investigate that. Investigate their social media. And this is something you need to tell your kids and grandkids. What's posted on Facebook, it's not like Vegas. It doesn't stay there. It goes everywhere, and it is there for eternity. What's on social media will always be on social media. And so if you want to know, is this a person of character, take a quick look at their photos on Instagram, Facebook, their Twitter feeds, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes in HR departments, more and more HR departments, that's the first thing they look at.
Yes.
Then ask questions like this. What excites you? What gets you going? What mistakes have you made that you regret? That's a big one. Why ask that? Are they self-critical? Do they learn?
That's right. That's a good question.
What is the biggest misconception people have about you? See if you can read them. See if they can read themselves. See if they're trying to read other people. What kind of boss gets the best out of you? Those kind of things. And you find that person, a type I or hopefully a type I, you get them in there. In both relationships and jobs, have long hellos and quick goodbyes. You need to, if this is a person, you say, okay, this is a hard worker, this is a person of character, this is a person I want in my organization, you spend a lot of time and patience training them. But if you get to the point where you say, no, this person just can't cut it, you got to pull that cord quick, pull that trigger quick. Don't let it sit around and fester. You're not doing them any favors or your organization any favors. You got to get rid of them quick. And again, are you the kind of, you have to ask yourself all the time, are you the kind of boss, are you the kind of employee, are you the kind of leader people want to be around? If not, why? And you need to work on it. How do you become one? It's going through those habits to be sure. And here's another thing you need to do. And we're going to talk more about this next week because this does not get, like I said, enough attention out there. It's a great little book. It's kind of strangely written because it's written by an entrepreneurial hipster, which is a weird combination in my opinion, but Steve Jobs was a hippie, so, you know, who knows. But anyway, Tim Sanders wrote a little book called Love is the Killer App, and it's a really good book. Now, some of his language is kind of weird, I don't get it, but he says that you need to, if you really want to become a leader that helps people, do that 8 things Stephen Covey talks about, helping people find their voice. And this goes into you being kind of a leader, kind of boss. You need to acquire knowledge, share your knowledge, and show compassion. So you need to constantly be, if you're in any kind of leadership position, you need to be learning all the time. You need to be reading all the time. If you're not a reader, there are these things called podcasts. They're free. And there's lots of great podcasts. In our 5th final week, I'm going to go over some resources, some free resources out there that anybody can look up. Andy Stanley's got a monthly leadership podcast that's very good. Craig Groeschel has a monthly leadership podcast that's very good. Vanderbloom, there's all kinds out there. The Harvard Business Review has what they call their Idea Cast, which sometimes is only 15 minutes. Some great stuff out there. Learn this stuff, share this stuff. One of the things that one of the reasons Tim Sanders became one of the top leadership coaches in the world is he would just read constantly, and he was constantly giving books away when he met people who in that area that's like, I'm struggling with this area. Oh, I got a book on that. And he would just give it to them. All just to help them. If people would call him and say, I'm struggling with this. Well, I want to help you. How can I help you? And he would ask nothing in return for that. And that builds trust. That builds trust. If you're consistently contributing value to others, you will get others' attention, not just their time. You want people's attention, not just their time. See the difference? Makes sense? You want their attention. Why does a Super Bowl ad cost so much? Everybody's watching. What are they selling? What are the networks selling? Attention. They're selling your attention because it's that valuable. If you're the kind of person that people like to see coming, because they know this is a person that will help me out no matter what, ask nothing in return, you're going to build trust. And you're going to get their attention. And Christians should be leaders in every area of life, and that means you need to have that trust and attention. Anything before we move on? Any questions before we move on? Great little book came out last year called Start With Why. Anybody heard of it? Little book. If you get a chance, read it. There's some great stuff in there. Simon Sinek argues that the best organizations, whether they're nonprofits, whether they're for-profit businesses, always start with why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And they make sure everyone in the organization understands why they're doing what they're doing. You start with why. And Apple has been the best at this. Go back to Apple. Simon Sinek put it this way: if the average person off the street ran Apple, he'd probably say something like this. They would say, if Apple's like everyone else, said, hey, we make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? He says, that's not what Apple does, though. Here's what Apple does, and this comes from Steve Jobs. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. And we happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? See the difference? What happened this last week? The new iPhone came out. What did you see? Lines of people going around the block waiting to get one, even though they could wait one more week and not have to stand in line. Well, no, but Samsung has helped them. But George, even before that, how many times did you see on the news a line for a Samsung? Never. But Apple, every time a new iPhone's out there, there's the lines. Because they've created customer loyalty because they start with their why and they sell their why, not their product. See the difference? Start with why. Always start with why. It's not what you do, but why you do what you do that creates loyalty. And see, I don't care if this is a political party, this is a nonprofit, this is a for-profit business. If you just talk about price and product or whatever, then that's all people are going to care about. They're, okay, but what about the price down the street? But if they buy into your why and they're loyal, they'll always come to you first. Even if this price is higher down the street, they're going to come to you because they trust you. Make sense? And so this is just what it's all about. If you need to help people with this, and whether you know business people, whether you are a business person, whatever, always go back to the why. Can they tell you why they do what they do? Can they tell you what the vision is for their organization? And is it short, easy to remember? If not, they got work to do. They've got work to do. It's that start with why that creates loyalty. And you want loyalty. That's what you're going after in anything. In any organization. I worked for a Christian legal organization. And there are all kinds of Christian legal organizations out there. I worked for ADF, but there's Liberty, there's Pacific Justice, there's ACLJ, but we were the largest. And one of the reasons why is we kept a focus, and we cast that vision and that focus constantly, absolutely constantly. Those other legal organizations are great organizations. They have a tendency to try to do too much. We focused on 3 areas. That's all we did. People come, oh, we got to do this. Nope, we're doing these 3 things. That's all we're doing. When people would bring up to our CEO, how about we do this? He had a hedgehog, a little toy hedgehog he'd take and he'd put it in the middle of the table. Now that comes from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, where he argues that every organization has to have a hedgehog principle. A hedgehog gets into a fight with a fox. A fox knows 1,000 ways to fight. A hedgehog only knows one. Rolls up in a ball. And when the hedgehog rolls up in a ball, what can he do? Nothing. It only knows one way to fight, but it always wins. And Jim Collins says too many organizations try to do too much. Honestly, I think it's the same with individuals. Going too many different directions. What are you good at? Where's your flow? That should be your hedgehog principle. Stick to that. Keep your focus. Keep your focus and constantly cast the organization's vision on down. Southwest Airlines used to do this better than anybody. Now, I think they've kind of fallen off in the last few years, but for a while, Southwest was so good at customer service that after 9/11, you remember that 9/11, almost every air carrier's stock just went in the tank because everybody was afraid to fly. Southwest, actually, people sent them notes and checks. Customers sent Southwest Airlines checks to get them through this hard time. One of them sent a check for $1,000 and said, with this note, you've been so good to me over the years, I wanted to help you in your time of need. Now that's creating loyalty, is it? Right? That's what you're shooting for. That's what you want. The most successful companies, I would argue most successful nonprofits, I don't care what they are, they start with why and then they move to how and what. They start with why. Walmart began, Sam Walton had this vision: serve the community, serve our employees, serve our customers. In that order. He put employees above customers. Now, Walmart's deviated from that vision since Sam Walton died, and that's one of the reasons why it's kind of having trouble. But Sam Walton's original was, so much of the budget always goes into community affairs. We always, if we have to pass the hat for one of our employees is sick, we'll do it, and then we'll talk about serving our customers. And so what he did was he created this great culture, right? And that's what made him different from Target, Kmart, is that culture he built. If you've ever stayed at a Ritz-Carlton, if you ever afford to stay at a Ritz-Carlton, Ritz-Carlton has a very simple way they train their employees. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And they're the gold standard. And they just repeat that over and over again. If employee's getting out of line, that's not we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Starbucks founder Howard Schultz had a very, very distinct vision. And this, you should think about this because this has a big impact on politics, nonprofits, so forth. Neighborhoods are almost gone. We don't have neighbors anymore. New communities like planned communities being built outside Phoenix, so forth, they don't even put sidewalks out anymore. They don't even build sidewalks. They're a waste of time because sidewalks are built for you to go to your neighbor's, walk down the street to your neighbor's house. That doesn't happen anymore. People don't have people over anymore. It used to be, back in the old days when I was growing up, when I was a wee squirt in the 70s, we always had a cake set aside, a frozen cake set aside for when company just showed up. We weren't allowed to touch that cake. And so we were all jazzed when company would show up because, the cake's coming out, right? It was great. Now somebody knocks on your door today, it's like you grab your phone, dial 911 and wait to hit the other one. It's like, who is it? Because it doesn't happen anymore. So what Starbucks did, and now Terry has done this with Coffee at the Lofts downtown, is he's created what Howard Schultz called the third place. He said people have their first place, their home, which they're basically alone anymore. They have their second place, which is their work. They need a third place to socialize. It needs to feel like a living room, but it needs to be a safe spot where anybody can come and congregate. That's the third place. So he kept telling everyone, whenever there'd be a new, remember, this is their third place. This is their third place. This is their third place. Tell the baristas, this is their third place. Constantly catching that focus and that vision. Companies like Walmart and Apple floundered when they forgot their why. When Steve Jobs was fired, how many of you remember that back in the 80s? Steve Jobs was actually fired from Apple. They finally figured out when Apple was tanking and that Steve had taken this little company called Pixar to new heights. Thought, maybe we need to bring Steve back. And Steve came back and did some revelation. And here's the thing, Steve only had one semester of college at Reed College. He was not very well educated, but he just had a natural, intuitive leadership sense. Like one of the things he did was to help make sure there were no silos, is that he had it built so that the break room, there was only one break room, it was in the center of Apple where everybody would have to come from every department. He did not want individual break rooms. He wanted people interacting from all the different departments. It's an intuitive genius, right? And he constantly went right back to that vision. Why is Apple here? We are here to challenge the status quo. And he resurrected Apple. Why people are those type I entrepreneurs, but why people do need how people. Cynics are usually right, but optimists are the only things that make things different and change. I mean, 90% of the time, the cynic's going to be right. Now, you've heard me say it. I define an optimist as somebody who doesn't understand the situation. But it takes an optimist to get things going. If you're Steve Jobs needed Steve Wozniak and he needed those, you've always got to have that person, detail person right there. This morning while my wife was getting ready, I was sitting there watching a documentary on Tower Records. Remember Tower Records? I used to go to Tower Records on Sunset when I lived in LA. And it was so cool because you walk in there, there'd be rock stars in there. And there was this unwritten rule at Tower Records. You were never to bug anyone else. You were to let them shop. So if I'd walk in there like Don Henley or Slash or somebody like that would be in there, if you walked over for an autograph, the staff would actually stop you. You don't bother other customers. And Tower Records was this really cool place. When we were watching the documentary, the guy who founded Tower Records was this type I, big idea guy. And of course, his best friend was the money detail type, other kind of guy. And so he was the detail guy, and they were constantly fighting. But they were the best of friends because they knew they needed each other. The whys need the hows need the whys. You got to have that yin-yang thing going on. You got to have balance there. You got to look for it. And once you've decided on your why, you have to be loud and clear about it. Your why is part of your vision, and you need to cast it all the time in any organization and anything you're doing. Jack Welch was asked once, how do you know you've properly cast vision in your organization? He said, when you think you're going to throw up, if you say it one more time, you're almost there. It's constant. And you have to be very deliberate about that. I'll give you an example of how things have gone wrong. Do you remember, how many of you remember when Oprah gave every member of their studio audience a brand new car?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that? Yes. Tell me the brand of the car.
Pontiac.
What kind?
I'm not sure about that.
They spent $7 million as a promo to that, and all they remember is Oprah. Yeah, but it was a certain kind of car that bombed, and that's one of the reasons it bombed. They spent oh yeah, it's documented, I'll show you. They spent $7 million, and all people remembered wasn't that nice that Oprah did? It was a car. What kind of car? I don't know, but Oprah was so nice. It helped Oprah. It didn't help Pontiac at all. Because they did not really focus, they were not loud and clear about what they were doing and why. See the problem? People still remember that about Oprah, but I got it written down. I'll show you in a minute. Hold on. Remember, we're live, George. We're live. When designing systems around your why, remember that you cannot manage what you cannot measure, and what you measure is what gets done. What you measure is what gets done. Always keep that in mind. You need to take risks. Christians especially should be risk takers. I mean, we're the only people on the planet that say if we die, we're better off. So what difference does it make? We need to take risks. A Cornell study found that the biggest regrets people have at the end of their life are not the mistakes they made, it's the chances they didn't take. By an 84 to 16%. 84% of long-term regret comes, I wish I'd done that and I didn't. Don't let that be you. My best friend growing up, Steve Hamilton, and I used to say, back when I was taking off for LA, we used to sit and say, we have a saying, we'd say it all the time. We'd look at each other and say it. One of these days, Steve, you and I are going to be old men, and we'll look at each other, and we'll regret a lot of the things we did, but we'll never regret what we didn't do. Take risks. Leaders, and Christians need to be leaders. Christians need to be risk takers. We were not designed by God to have a safe passage to our deathbed. Make sense? So, if you are a Christian, and I hope you are, and if you're not, we need to talk right after this class. We're looking to baptize more people every week. Go lead. Do not sit around your house, especially if you're retired. Do not sit around your house and tinker around. Guys, find an area to lead. Find a nonprofit. Find an organization. Find something and go and do. And be absolutely loud and clear about why you're doing this, because you are a Christian and you believe you're called to be salt in the society, right? And that means you got to get out there and do something. Get out there and do something. And be very loud and clear that you're doing this because you're a disciple of Jesus Christ. And you want to help people, and you don't want anything in return. You just want to help others. And we're going to talk more about that next week, about how to become a community leader. It starts with your contact list or your Rolodex or whatever.
Christ Community meets on Saturday at 5 p.m. and Sunday at 10:30 a.m. For more information, visit www.christcommunity.net. or check out our Facebook page.